I guess the part that still sticks with me isn't the argument, or the slammed door, or even the way my girlfriend muttered something I pretended not to hear. It's the moment after. The quiet one. The one I wasn't prepared for. I was still standing behind the counter at the repair shop when everything went sideways. Wires, tools, receipts, my normal clutter, spread around like the day hadn't just cracked open. The bell above the glass door had barely stopped ringing from her exit when I realized I was holding my breath. And then she was there. Not my girlfriend, her best friend. Nadia. She walked in like she always did, with that calm confidence I never managed to imitate. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, hair pulled back loosely like she wasn't trying, and yet somehow always looked more put together than everyone else in the room. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at the door, then at me. "You okay?" she asked eventually, but her voice was too steady, too measured, like she already knew the answer and was giving me space to lie. I didn't. I just shrugged, rubbing the back of my neck the way I do when it feels like my thoughts are all elbows and sharp edges. The shop suddenly felt louder, though nothing was actually making noise. The refrigerator humming, the fluorescent light flickering, the scent of machine oil hanging in the air. She stepped closer. Not close enough for anything to be inappropriate. Just closer. More than a friend's best friend would normally stand. Close enough that I felt the quiet intention behind it. Nadia had this way of looking at you like she was reading the part you didn't write down. She was always careful with her words, but not with her eyes. Those said too much. She was angry, I said, even though she didn't ask. A pause. A softer one from her. I know. Of course she knew. They told each other everything. Or at least, that's what I assumed. I wondered what version of me had been passed along through late-night texts or quick coffee meetups. Probably the same one I saw in the mirror. Good guy, tries hard, screws up anyway. I reached for a customer form, pretending I needed to tidy up. Anything to keep my hands busy. But then hers landed lightly over mine. Just a touch. A brief, steadying press of her fingers into the back of my hand. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't comforting either. It was grounding, like she was telling me to stay still for a second. "She'll cool down," Nadia murmured, though she said it like someone who wasn't sure. I pulled my hand away too fast. Not out of discomfort. More like my brain tripped over itself, trying to figure out what that moment meant, and my body panicked before the rest of me caught up. She pretended not to notice. The bell over the door chimed again. An older man coming in with a cracked laptop, and the magic, or tension, or whatever that had been, flickered out. But she didn't leave right away. She moved to the side of the counter, leaning slightly against the wall, arms crossed loosely. Observing. Thinking. The kind of presence that made you aware of every tiny gesture you made. When the customer stepped away to take a call, it was just us again. Quiet shop, late morning sunlight coming through the dusty window. The hum of the fan pushing warm air around. "You're harder on yourself than she is," Nadia said. It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't a criticism either. It felt accurate in a way I didn't want to admit. I looked up. She was already looking at me. And for a split second, one breath, maybe two, there was something unspoken between us. Not romantic, not dangerous, just the recognition that she saw a version of me no one else bothered to notice. She opened her mouth to say something else, but the customer came back, and the moment snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. Still, the impression of her hand on mine, light, steady, intentional, lingered longer than it should have. I kept working, pretending the day had returned to normal. But I already knew the truth. That small, quiet touch was going to replay in my head long after the shop closed. The second time I saw Nadia that week, it was after closing, when the shop was supposed to be quiet, when normal people were already home making dinner or watching something forgettable on TV. I was sweeping up metal shavings near the workbench when I heard the knock. Soft. Too soft to be my girlfriend. Too patient, too polite. It was her. She stood in the doorway holding a boxy old radio, the kind with dials instead of buttons. She lifted it a little, almost apologetic. "I know you're closed," she said, "but it just stopped working. I figured you might look at it." Her voice wasn't its usual composed, steady thing. It had a crack in it, thin but real, like she was tired or had been swallowing something heavy all day. I stepped aside and let her in. The shop looked different with no customers around. Dimmer, quieter, like the shadows were listening. She set the radio on the counter, but she didn't step back. Her fingers lingered on the handle longer than needed. "I can look at it now," I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. "You don't have to rush." She stopped. A half-breath pause. "I'm not in a hurry." There was something off in her posture. Not wrong, just looser. Shoulders not as tight. A kind of exhaustion that made her seem younger and older at the same time. I opened the radio carefully, trying to focus on the screws and wires, but it was impossible not to notice her leaning just slightly against the counter, her hand resting flat against the cool metal surface. Her fingers tapped once, then went still. A tiny giveaway. She was thinking too much. "Long day?" I asked, pretending to concentrate on the back panel. "You have no idea." She gave a small laugh. Quiet, tired, not the kind she used around other people. "I'm starting to think I should live in a cabin somewhere. No phone, no people, no everything." I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because something about that confession felt fragile, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. "Wouldn't suit you," I finally said. "You'd miss telling people when they're wrong." That earned a real laugh. Soft, low, and warmer than anything else in the room. She shook her head slightly, and a strand of hair slipped loose near her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear, but her hand lingered there, brushing her jaw like she was trying to keep herself anchored. When I glanced up, she was watching me. Not directly, more like through the edges of her thoughts. Eyes softer than usual, guard down just enough for me to see something she usually kept hidden. "You noticed too much," she murmured. I wasn't sure if it was a complaint or something else. Her voice dropped even quieter. "Most people don't." I swallowed. "You make it hard not to." That changed something in the air. She didn't move, but the distance between us suddenly felt smaller. Heavier. She broke eye contact first, clearing her throat, straightening her posture. The careful version of her slid back into place, but not fully. A crack still showed. I finished checking the wires. "It's an easy fix. Loose connector. 30 seconds. She nodded, but she wasn't looking at the radio. She looked at my hands instead. Steady, moving slowly, not shaking the way my chest felt. When I snapped the back panel on, she reached out to take the radio. Her fingers brushed mine. No mistake. No hesitation. Not innocent, either. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For the repair. For the company. For not asking why she really came." I wasn't sure. She held the radio to her chest, exhaled softly, and for a moment, just one, she let herself be unguarded in front of me. The shop felt too small for whatever that was. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door, looking back with a half-smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Try not to notice everything next time," she said. But we both knew I already would. The rain didn't start until after 9. One of those slow-building storms that gives you warnings you pretend not to notice. The shop was already closed, lights half off, paperwork scattered across the counter like I'd given up on pretending to be organized. I was locking up when I saw her standing outside under the narrow overhang, arms crossed, hair damp at the edges. She wasn't holding anything this time. No radio. No excuse. "You walk in this?" I asked, pulling the door back open. She stepped inside without answering, shaking off a few droplets. "My car battery died 2 streets over," she said. Didn't feel like calling anyone else. Anyone else. Not my girlfriend. Not any friend her age. Just me. She pushed wet strands of hair back with both hands, exhaling like she'd been holding her breath the whole time she'd walked. The dim light made her look softer, somehow. More real, less invincible. I grabbed a towel from the back room and handed it to her without thinking. Her fingers brushed mine again. That same accidental on-purpose touch she never commented on. "Thanks," she murmured, drying her hair slowly. Carefully, like she needed the small task. I should have gone to check her car right away. I didn't. Instead, we ended up sitting on the counter edge, sharing the same towel between us like idiots who didn't know how to manage distance. The storm outside deepened, a low rumble filling the silence. "You ever feel like you're trying too hard to keep everything together?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was too quiet, too unarmored. The kind of question someone asks in a moment that shouldn't exist. All the time, I said. She gave a tired half-smile. Her knee brushed mine. Not intentional. Not avoided. She leaned forward slightly, elbows on her thighs, towel draped around her shoulders. She looked exhausted in the way strong people look when they're finally alone. The kind of tired that comes after weeks of pretending not to be. I told her to be patient with you, Nadia said out of nowhere. My heart stopped for a second. You talked about me? Of course we talk about you, she said, rubbing her temples. You matter to her. A pause. Then quieter, and apparently to me. She didn't look at me when she said it. Like the words slipped out faster than her restraint could catch them. The storm cracked louder. I didn't breathe. Nadia. I wasn't sure what I was about to say. An apology, a question, something dangerous. But the universe didn't let me finish. Her phone buzzed. She stiffened. The name lit up the screen for half a second. Her ex-husband. She turned the phone over like the sight of it burned. Sorry, she whispered, not to him, to me. The tension in her shoulders surged back into place. She stood too quickly, pacing once, trying to gather herself. This is a bad idea. Being here this long. You should check the car. I shouldn't have stayed. I stood too, but slower. You're fine. We're just talking. She laughed once, short, bitter. Nothing about this feels like just talking. Lightning lit up the windows. She closed her eyes, steadying herself. When she opened them again, something had changed. She wasn't stepping closer, but she also wasn't stepping away. I walked past her toward the door, reaching for my jacket. But then she spoke, soft, almost trembling. Don't go yet. I froze. She seemed startled by her own words. Her hand lifted slightly, as if she'd meant to catch me by the sleeve, but caught herself at the last second. We stood inches apart. The storm growled. Her fingers hovered, just hovered, near my arm. A near touch. A near confession. A near something. I didn't move. Neither did she. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. And then she pulled her hand back, barely. But not before I felt the warmth of what almost happened. The storm eased sometime after I fixed her battery, but neither of us mentioned it. The rain had thinned to a whisper, just enough to make the world outside feel padded, muted, safe in the wrong way. We ended up back inside the shop because she didn't want to sit in her car yet, and I didn't want to push her out into the night. The lights were low. The hum of the fan was the only sound between breaths. She stood near the counter, one hand resting on its edge like she needed the support. I leaned against the doorframe across from her. Too far. Too close. I couldn't tell anymore. For a long time, neither of us spoke. She broke first. What are we doing? Not sharp. Not angry. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes when you stop lying to yourself. I swallowed hard. I don't know. She looked up then. Really looked. Not at my hands, or the floor, or the rain. Right at me. Her eyes were darker in the dim light, holding something that made my chest feel too small. This isn't how it's supposed to feel, she said. Any of it. I nodded once. I know. She let out a shaky breath, fingers tightening on the counter. You're younger. You're with someone. I'm complicated. And yet, she stopped, as if the next part might break her. And yet what? I asked quietly. She gave a small, humorless laugh. You really want me to say it? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Her gaze drifted toward the door, then back to me. Every time I come here, I tell myself I won't stay. I won't linger. I won't notice things I shouldn't. She rubbed her thumb over her palm, an anxious motion I'd never seen from her before. But I do. My throat felt tight. You notice me? She exhaled sharply. Not annoyed, overwhelmed. Of course I notice you. How you hesitate before you speak. How your shoulders drop when you think no one's watching. That thing you do with your hand when you're trying to stay calm. Her eyes flicked to my hand, which instinctively curled into a fist. I notice everything. The room felt painfully small. I stepped forward once. She stepped back, but only half a step. Not enough to break whatever was happening. Just enough to show she was scared of where it could lead. Nadia, I said, almost a whisper. Don't, she breathed, shaking her head. If you say my name like that, I won't be able to pretend nothing's happening. Silence folded around us. Heavy. Intimate. The kind of silence where breaths feel like confessions. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to find air. This isn't normal. No, she said softly. It isn't. We can't keep doing this. I know, but neither of us moved. Lightning flashed faintly outside, followed by a distant rumble. Her eyes softened, something breaking through her guard. A small, fragile truth she'd been holding too tightly. I don't want this, she said. My chest tightened painfully. I don't either. We stood there, stuck in the gravity of something unspoken and undeniable, watching each other slowly come apart in the quiet. She took one breath, then another. Her voice cracked, barely, but I heard it. I feel more like myself when I'm near you, she whispered. She immediately looked down, as if the words were too heavy to face. And God, that was the line I knew I'd be replaying long after I walked her out into the thinning rain. The next time I saw her, the storm had already passed. The world felt washed clean, but she looked like the rain had followed her home. She walked into the shop slowly, almost cautiously, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to anymore. Her hair was tied back differently. No makeup today. Clothes simple, uncharacteristic. She looked like she hadn't slept. I was repairing a motherboard but stopped instantly when she stepped through the doorway. I shouldn't be here, she said before I could speak. But she was here, and that meant something. She held her phone in her hand, screen cracked, the corner dented like it had hit the floor hard. She placed it on the counter carefully, like it was the remains of something delicate. Dropped it? I asked. She hesitated. You could say that. I picked it up. The screen lit for a second, just long enough for me to see the last notification she'd received. A voicemail. Timestamp, 1:14 a.m. Sender, unknown number. She grabbed the phone back quickly, too quickly, as if embarrassed she'd let me see anything at all. Can you fix it? She asked, voice tight. Yeah, I said gently. You okay? She opened her mouth to lie, then shook her head instead. No, not really. She pulled out a chair slowly, lowering herself onto it like her body was made of something heavier than bone. She rested her elbows on her knees, fingers pressed together in a quiet, trembling steeple. It was the first time I'd ever seen her look unguarded without trying to be. What happened? I asked, sitting across from her. She looked at the floor. I got a message last night. From someone I haven't heard from in years. A breath. Another. It wasn't meant for me, but it gutted me anyway. I waited. She wasn't the type to spill easily. It was my mother's number. She paused. She died 3 years ago. My chest tightened. Nadia. The message was an old one, she whispered. A leftover voicemail from her. Somehow the phone updated or reset, I don't know, but it resurfaced. She rubbed her thumb across her knuckles, voice barely holding. It was her voice, telling me she was proud of me, saying she wished she'd called more. It was from the week before she passed, and I never heard it. Silence spread slowly between us. Not a heavy silence, a fragile one. I leaned forward slightly, instinctively softening my voice. I'm sorry you had to hear it like that. She shook her head once. No, it's not that. It's just that. Hearing her voice again, her throat tightened. I wasn't ready for it. It reminded me of who I used to be, who she thought I was. She looked up at me then, eyes wet but steady. And then I thought about you. I froze. Me? She nodded. The way you look at me. Like I'm still someone worth seeing. My mother did that too. Before everything got complicated, my heart felt like it skipped. Not in a romantic way, in a deeper, quieter way. The kind that rearranges something inside your chest. I don't think I remind you of her, I said softly. No, she said, shaking her head gently. You remind me of who I tried to become after she died. Someone open, someone honest. Her voice dropped. Someone I lost. I swallowed hard. You didn't lose her. Or you. She gave a small, shaking laugh. Maybe not. Maybe I just misplaced myself for a few years. I wanted to reach out. I didn't. Instead, I placed her repaired phone gently in front of her. She didn't pick it up. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Raw, shaken, grateful, terrified. A single tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. Don't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like I'm breaking. She swallowed. Because if you do, I might start telling you things I can't take back. I don't know how long we sat there after her confession. Maybe minutes, maybe longer. Time felt like something that had stepped outside the room, leaving just the two of us inside a pause neither of us knew how to break. She wiped her cheek again, even though the tear was already gone. I could tell she hated herself for slipping like that in front of me. You don't have to hold everything together right now, I said quietly. She let out a shaky breath. I don't know how to do anything else. I pulled the chair a little closer, slow enough that she could stop me if she wanted. She didn't. She just watched my movement with an unreadable expression, like she was weighing something heavy and fragile all at once. My mother was the only person who ever understood me without making me explain myself, she said. Losing her made everything quieter. Her voice softened. And then you came along, and suddenly I wasn't alone inside my own head anymore. I looked down at my hands, because holding her gaze felt too much like saying something I wasn't sure either of us could take back. I didn't mean to make things harder for you. You didn't, she whispered. You made them clearer. Another silence. Not tense this time. Full. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling as if she needed something steady to look at. We crossed a line somewhere. I don't know when. Maybe the first time you remembered something I said in passing. Maybe the night of the storm. She closed her eyes for a second. I keep replaying that moment when I asked you not to go. I know, I said softly. That wasn't me being careless, she continued. That was me realizing I didn't want to be the strong one in front of you anymore. I felt something in my chest loosen. Not relief, not victory, just truth settling where lies used to be. We can try to step back, I offered, even though the words tasted like something I didn't want. Create some distance. She smiled at the floor, a small, tired smile. If that were really possible, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. I didn't argue. We both knew she was right. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees again, but this time her fingertips brushed mine on the table. Barely there, barely intentional. Just enough for my breath to catch. She didn't pull away. Not this time. Her voice dropped to something honest and trembling. I don't know what this is. Neither do I admitted. But it's real, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, it's real. She stared at our hands, the inches that weren't inches anymore. I don't want to ruin your life. Or mine. You're not, I said. You're you. She exhaled a broken laugh. That's exactly the problem. For a moment, we didn't say anything at all. We just sat there, fingers barely touching, the quiet between us deeper than any confession. And then, slowly, almost cautiously, she turned her hand and let her palm rest fully against mine. No rush. No drama. Just a decision. I closed my fingers around hers. Not claiming. Not promising. Just holding. Her shoulders dropped, like she'd been carrying something for years and finally put it down. You make the world feel less sharp, she said. You make me feel steady, I whispered. She leaned forward just a fraction, forehead nearly grazing mine. Close enough that I felt the warmth of her breath, but not close enough to cross a line we weren't ready to name. We stayed like that, suspended. Not kissing, not retreating, just being. A soft collapse into something neither of us had meant to find. When she finally pulled back, her voice was barely a thread. Whatever happens next, we can't pretend anymore. And somehow, that quiet truth felt like the real beginning. I'm telling this from the calm of the present, long after the storm, long after the moments that felt too sharp, too close, too confusing to name. It's strange how time softens things, how distance doesn't replace emotion but organizes it, shapes it into something you can actually hold without shaking. Back then, I didn't understand the weight of what I was stepping into. I just knew her, knew the sound of her voice drifting into a room before she appeared, the way she held herself as if she'd learned a long time ago how to survive without expecting softness from anyone. She wasn't someone I expected to change me. I'm not even sure she expected to change, either. But something happened between us, slowly, quietly, like the way dawn sneaks up on a tired city. One moment we were two people orbiting each other's lives with guarded tension, and the next, it felt like we had been breathing the same air for years without realizing it. Looking back, I think the real turning point wasn't a single moment. It was the accumulation of tiny ones, the lingering pauses she didn't walk away from, the way she'd look at me like she was bracing herself for something she didn't fully understand, the silence that stopped being a wall and started feeling like a room we both stepped into willingly. I used to think love arrived loudly, like thunder, but with her, it was the opposite. It was the quiet moments, the ones nobody else would notice, that rearranged me. And at some point, I realized I wasn't just learning her. I was learning myself, the version of me that existed only when she was in the room. What changed in her? Everything and nothing. She didn't become softer. She just stopped pretending she didn't need softness. She let herself lean, even if it was just for a moment. She let herself trust that I wouldn't run, even when she half expected that I would. What changed in me? I learned that connection isn't about age or logic or timing. It's about presence. It's about seeing someone fully and still choosing to stay. I learned that sometimes the most grown-up thing you can do is admit what scares you and walk toward it anyway. And what changed in the nature of what we felt? It stopped being an accident. It became something deliberate, quiet, but deliberate. We didn't label anything. We didn't need to. Some truths don't require names to be real. Even now, when I think back on the beginning, on that spark neither of us acknowledged at first, I feel this warm ache behind my ribs. Not regret, not longing, just gratitude for the way two people can collide at the exact moment they've both convinced themselves that nothing meaningful is coming. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?